My name is Dennis Johnson, and I am joined today by Kate Anderson, and we are both librarians. And we're going to be presenting APA in 30 minutes. It is one of the Library and Learning Services webinar series. Webinars for winter 2023. And I'm going to be doing the first part of the webinar, and then Kate is going to take over for the second part. Again, if you could please mute yourself, that would be helpful. Um, so that's a little bit about me. I'll give Kate a chance to introduce herself.
Thank you. I'm Kate Anderson, one of the librarians here at Rasmussen, and I just want to thank you for joining us here today. And I think Dennis will take it from here.
So actually, I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera off. I just wanted to have it on at the beginning so you could see that this is a live person. So thank you for joining us for this APA in 30 minutes webinar. We're going to try to keep it to 30 minutes. We'll see what happens. So first thing we want to do is ask you a poll question. So if you could please type in the chat, what is your comfort level with APA? Please type in A, B, C, or D. So Kate and I can get a feeling for your understanding of APA. So we have a couple of somewhat comfortable, not comfortable. Again, some B's and C's, somewhat comfortable and not comfortable. So good. Thank you for doing that. That gives us a good pulse of who's joining us for this webinar. So questions to answer and what we are going to present today. We're going to discuss what is APA 7th edition style. Why do I need to use APA? What are the three parts of APA, including formatting, in-text citations, and the references list, and where can I find help? And like I said at the beginning, if you have questions, you can please type them in the chat and one of us will respond. So let's begin by defining what is APA. It stands for the American Psychological Association. It is a popular citation style used in academic and professional writing. It governs the format of your paper in Microsoft Word and the citation of your resources in the body of your paper and in your reference list. Why does Rasmussen use APA? This is an important question. Rasmussen adopted the use of APA because it's a widely used standard. It is also consistent, it is a clear and neat format, and it aids the reader. So the reader is typically going to be your instructor. So you're going to want your instructor to be able to read a clean, properly formatted and written research paper. If you could please mute yourself, that would be helpful. Thank you. It's also used in your field of study. It's a documentation of research. It's using outside resources in your writing adds to your writing's credibility. So that's an important step. So you're doing research, you're finding resources, whatever they are. You want to incorporate those resources into your writing. So you need to cite those sources. And it also will show your instructor that you have performed the research and know how to incorporate resources into your writing. Also, the last bullet point here is really important because using an editorial style will help you avoid plagiarism. So again, plagiarism is if you use somebody else's words, thoughts, or ideas, and you may pass them off as your own. And you may do that just because you don't know that you need to cite something, making a valid mistake, or, maybe hopefully you're not copying and pasting something and trying to get away with it. So you need to cite your sources, and we're going to go through more in depth of how to do that for quoting and for paraphrasing and summarizing coming up. So when are citations needed? You include citations whenever you use information that is paraphrased, summarized, or quoted. So Paraphrasing is using different words to express the original message. Summarizing is giving the main facts in a condensed form, and quoting is repeating word for word the information that you have used. So quoting might be the easiest one to understand. That's taking a direct quote from somebody in writing, quotation marks, it's word for word. You need to cite that. Paraphrasing and summarizing are putting that information into your own words. Also, when you use any images such as tables or graphics that you did not create yourself, you need to cite those, and any statistics such as numbers or data need to be cited. There are two places that you need to cite your sources in your paper. These are in the actual text of your paper, that is called the in-text citations, and then on the last page of your research paper is called the references. You have your full reference citation on the last page. So those two go together. Now, a few words on the fonts and general formatting for an APA formatted paper. So there are 6 approved fonts, and they are approved because they're legible, they're available, and they're accessible. There are 3 sans serif fonts, and these include Calibri 11 point, Arial 11, and one that I've never seen anybody use, but it is possible, Lucida Sans Unicode 10. And then there's 3 serif fonts. So these are Times New Roman 12 point, Georgia 11 point, and Computer Modern 10 point. So you can see that Calibri and Times New Roman are highlighted because those are typically the 2 that are used the most. Calibri is the default font in Word, and Rasmussen sample paper and APA paper template use Calibri 11 point font. So you are acceptable to use Calibri 11 point or any of these 6, whatever you want to use, but keep in mind that on the APA guide, there is a template and a sample paper that you can download. Those are in Calibri. A few more words about formatting. The entire paper is double spaced, including the references page. It may look odd, but everything needs to be double spaced. And there's also 1-inch margins for the entire paper. The title page is your first page of a research paper, and it includes the page number aligned in the upper right. And in fact, every page of a research paper has the page numbering on it. The title of the paper bolded, and then your name, the university name, the course number and course title, instructor's name, and the assignment due date are all centered on the title page. And if you download the APA template, the title page is already there for you. You just need to type your own information into the template. All right, so I've alluded to this a couple times. So there is a guide for APA that Rasmussen provides. Very easy to find, and I see that the link is already put into the chat. Thank you, Kate. So on this APA guide, you can find the Quick Start Toolkit, a sample paper, a paper template, APA Basics interactive lesson, a checklist, which is a really helpful and handy tool to keep next to you. You can maybe print it out and check things off as you're completing your APA writing, and also videos and much more. So please check out the online APA guide. Next, let's move into a writing assignment example. This example is you need to search the online library, find 2 recent articles about the civil rights movement, and then you need to summarize those 2 articles in a 1-page paper and make sure to cite your sources in APA format. So one way you could go about this assignment is in these steps. First step is search the online library, find 2 articles that interest you, read them, go back and highlight the important information. So that's an important step, finding the information and then reading it and becoming aware of what the article talks about. Then after you've read the articles and highlighted what you want, set the articles aside, and then write your summary. So that was the assignment, was to find 2 articles and summarize them. So you've written your summaries, then you need to create your full article references for your reference page and then create your in-text citation. Um, may not mean a lot to you right now, but we are going to go through and show you how to create references for 3 different sources and how to create the in-text citations. All right, so next I'm going to move into the references for APA 7th edition. And first thing here is the reference list. So this is your last page of your research paper, if that's what you're working on. So the reference list contains the information the reader of your paper needs to find the resources. So it's going to have the author, the date, the title, and the source. Kind of keep those things in mind when you're researching and look for those 4 parts. Again, that's look for an author, a date, a title, and a source. So the reference list is on its own page at the end of your research paper. Entries must be in alphabetical order. You may have one or you may have many, and every source that you cite in text should be listed on your reference list. So if you have a source on your references list, you're going to need at least one in-text citation in your the content of your paper. So those references is bolded and centered, and again, everything is double spaced, and these references and the screenshot here include the author, date, title, and source, but you wouldn't want to include that in the content of your paper. So that's when you use an in-text citation, which is typically just the author and the year. And we have examples coming up for that. So here's the reference format, the 4 different elements, the author, date, title, and source, the authors who created it, date, when was it published, the title, simply, what is it called, and the source, where can the work be accessed. So building a reference for an ebook. So this is an example of an ebook from the online library. It looks like it is Mastering Academic Writing in the Sciences. And what you see on your screen here, the author, date, title, and source are color-coded. The top box is the ebook from the library, and then the bottom box is what the reference citation would look like. So you want to identify the author, and then you have the date, the title, and the source. So for an ebook, you want to include the publisher, and then this is from the library, so it's from the eBook Central ProQuest database. So you would want to include that URL or link from the library. I also want to mention that APA references begin with the author, and you only include the last name and then initial of the first name and then a period. So you can see that after the author, there's a period, after the date, there's a period, after the title, there's a period, and after the source, there's a period. So after every 4 of those elements, you have a period. So the date is 2018, and then your title of the book, and it's italicized because it is a book, and then your source. Next, we're going to take a look at a journal article. Again, this is from the online library, and we've identified the author, date, title, and source again. So you can see that this journal article has 4 different authors, and you use the same formatting of last name, comma, initial of first name, and then period, and then comma, and then the last author, you do the ampersand. So then you have date, you have your title, and then your source is the Metacognition Learning, which is a journal. Then you have the issue and the journal number, and then the page numbering. And then you can see this example includes a DOI, that's the Digital Object Identifier. and that is taken from the library database. Will provide that DOI for you. Last one I have here is for a web page. So this is a little more difficult, finding the author, date, title, and source, because it's not from the library database. So you need to be a little more diligent in finding the different parts. So you want to look for the author. It looks like it is Gold is the author's name, the date, and then the title, and then the source is from Inside Higher Ed. And for a web page, you would include the URL, or the link from the browser as part of the source. So again, you want to look for author, date, title, and source and put them into the correct APA format. And lastly, I have the references list, so putting it all together. So this is what the three sources that we just went through look like. So this is the last page. There's page numbering, upper right, references, bolded and centered, and then in alphabetical order based on the author's name. So we have A, then E, then G. And you can also see that there is used a hanging indent is used for the references. All right, that was kind of a lot to go through, I know, but we have many different resources that you can refer to, such as the online APA guide. And next, I'm going to pass it off to Kate, and she's going to take us through to the end. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Dennis. And let me know, I just took control of the slides. Let me know if they move or not. I just moved it. Did that work, Dennis?
Yes, it did.
Perfect, thank you. Yes, so Dennis has done a great job of talking about formatting requirements for APA style papers, as well as talking about the reference list, how to develop the reference list, and the individual references within. As Dennis mentioned, you can't have a reference entry in the reference list without a matching in-text citation to go with it. They depend on one another. In-text citations, again, are used to cite or credit any idea that is not your own. So that can be a direct word-for-word quotation from the source that you're using. It can be a summary. It can be a paraphrase where you're using your own words, description, summary to, kind of provide information from that original source, but make it sort of fit into your paper. And then you also have to give credit for any images that you've used in your paper from outside sources, as well as any data from outside sources that you've used. The in-text citations will appear in the body of your paper, and they give credit right then and there in the body of your paper when you use that source to the source that you took your information from. So they really inform the reader that, again, this information is from an outside source. And again, it's just that little piece, typically the author's last name, the date of publication, perhaps a page or paragraph number for a direct quote. And it tells the reader that they can also look at the reference list for the rest of the information about that source. So we have an example here of sort of the differences of what an in-text citation looks like for a paraphrase or summary versus a direct quotation. So we can see that for a paraphrase or a summary, again, this is putting the original material from that outside source into your own words. So when you do that, you do not have to include quotation marks. What you would do is simply provide an in-text citation, and you can see an example of an in-text citation for a paraphrase or summary at the bottom of the left box. So the in-text citation would start with the opening parentheses and then the author's last name, and we can see in the example that's Smith, and then a comma, and then the date of publication, again in the example that's 2018, a closing parentheses, and a period at the end of the entire summary or paraphrase. That period really indicates to your reader that this sentence and the information within it belong to this source, and that's why the period appears at the end of the entire thing. Pardon me. On the other hand, if you have a quotation, again, that's word for word from the original source, you do need to indicate that to your reader by providing quotation marks around those words that are directly taken from that source. So that's a difference there. And then additionally, in the in-text citation, you have to add either the page, if you have a page number where you got that information from, or the paragraph number. Now, a paragraph number is needed for sources that are only found or originally published online. So a lot of times for web pages, that is what you have to use. And so you would put PARA period to indicate paragraph.
Hey, you ever seen a wealthy person or a wealthy family or a jet owner? Like, I got a jet, I'm sorry, you know. You ever
All right, so we have an example here on this slide of what exactly a paraphrase or summary might look like in a paper. So we have a first example here that shows the use of an in-text citation falling at the end of a sentence. This is one option that you can use in your papers. So you can see that the sentence is prior to the in-text citation. And we can see again that we've got the parentheses, the author's last name, who is responsible for the information, a comma, date of publication, closing parentheses, and a period at the end of everything. Now, the second example is simply an example of leading into the information using the author's name. So we can see it's the exact same information, the exact same words that are used, but we simply lead into it by providing the author's last name and the date of publication at the beginning. And that is simply another option that students may choose to use in their papers to just kind of vary their writing a little bit and make it a bit more interesting for their reader. Additionally, if you're using that author for the first time and you know that they're highly respected in their field, it may be beneficial to lead into that as well. So you could say something like Berkman, a leading psychologist, that sort of thing, where you're leading into the information provided by that outside source and letting your reader know why it's important, why we should trust this particular author, that sort of thing. This slide is simply some examples of what it would look like to use a direct quotation within your paper. So again, we can see that we have quotation marks around the word for word information from that outside source. So again, that indicates to our reader that this is a quotation. The topmost is an example of simply including the in-text citation at the end of the quote. And it looks very similar to, that first bullet point on the last slide. Again, the difference is those quotation marks, and then we provide the page number. In this case, the P.3 is the page number. And again, if it's an electronic source published electronically, it would be PARA for the paragraph that the quote was found in. The second one is another example of leading into a quote or leading into those word for word pieces of information from that outside source. If we're doing that, again, we provide the author's last name and the date of publication side by side, and then we would provide the page or paragraph number at the end of all of that information, at the end of the sentence. A common question that we have from students is how to manage sources that are not quite as simple, that maybe have more than one author. So this slide helps us answer some of those questions. So if you only have one or two authors, you will include both of the authors' last names in every citation. So we can see an example of that here. The first one is for an in-text citation from a paraphrase. The second one just happens to be for a quotation. Again, we're including that PARA for paragraph. The second bullet point walks us through what we would do if we have three or more authors. So if you have three or more authors for a source, you would include the name of only the first author plus et al. in every citation. So again, we have an example just underneath that. If our author's last name was Johnson and we had 2 or more additional authors, Johnson would be listed first, then et al., which indicates more, a comma, and again, the date of publication. All right, so we've kind of walked through the basics of what an in-text citation would look like, both for a summary or a paraphrase as well as a quote. So we have another poll here for you. Which choice below is an example of a correct APA style in-text citation falling at the end of a direct quote? Is it A, B, C, or D? And you can put that into the chat area when you have a moment. Yep. Looks like everyone is answering correctly. Yes, C is the correct choice here. Again, this is for a direct quote. And so when we have a direct quote, we need to include an opening parentheses, the author's last name, comma, the date of publication, another comma. And then finally, either the page or paragraph number that we pulled that information from. Great job. Okay, so at this point, we're kind of just, walking through and summarizing some of the things that we touched on in this presentation today. So really, there are 3 basic elements to keep in mind when it comes to using APA style in your papers and your projects. First of all, we have our formatting. That's what Dennis covered at the onset of this presentation. Things like using one of the 6 approved fonts. Calibri is probably the most commonly used since it is the default. 1-inch margins around the paper, the outside of the paper, double spaced, etc. So keep those items in mind when you're writing your papers and projects. Also the references list, where you list all of your reference entries individually. And then finally, the in-text citations that you use in the body of your paper. And that gives credit where it is due and immediately where it's due when you provide information from the outside source. Okay, so we have covered a lot in this presentation, and certainly we do anticipate questions. We've just really scratched the surface with this APA basics in 30 minutes. And so we want to provide you with some tools as well as some helpful information about where to go to seek assistance moving forward, and perhaps more information to kind of guide you through this process of writing your papers using APA style. So first of all, you may have heard of a tool already called Noodle Tools. Noodle Tools is a citation generator, and you can use it to create reference entries as well as entire reference lists. You can find Noodle Tools via the library resources link in the Books and Tools menu in your online courses. You can also access it through the online library's homepage. Basically, what you do is you plug in your sources information into a form, and it will compile that information and organize it properly and do things like italicizing the appropriate pieces of information for that reference entry, and then compile it into a Word document that is alphabetized and formatted properly as well. So it's a really handy source, and I think, yes, Dennis just in the chat area, he provided a link to the Noodle Tools guide that can assist you with creating an account and just getting started with using that. We do have a number of other sources you can use for APA support. The first one is the APA 7th edition guide, which we've already linked to above in the chat area today. That is our primary source of information on APA 7th edition. So chances are good if you have a question, you'll be able to find an answer about it there. But we also have some other fantastic resources. So APA Academic Writer is another tool. It's a bit more advanced than Noodle Tools, but it's along the same lines where you can build reference pages or lists as well as entire papers and projects. It's a really, really great tool, very useful for guiding students through some of the more intricate details of APA. We've already mentioned Noodle Tools. We also have APA tutoring available. These are peer tutors, so they are also Rasmussen students, but they are students who have been studying here at Rasmussen for quite some time, and they've received special training in APA style so that they are able to assist other students with their APA questions. It's a really great service, and we have a lot of great feedback from students who use that service. We also have an online writing lab where you can submit your papers for review. If you want to use that service and you want them to specifically focus on reviewing your paper for APA, you can input that into a comments area when you submit your paper, and then they'll know to, in particular, focus on APA and give you feedback on that. And last but certainly not least, we do have a library chat service, and that's where you can chat with one of us librarians on the Rasmussen team. It could be Dennis, me, or one of the other 2 librarians as well that may be in that chat service, ready to assist you with some of the quick questions you may have on APA. And as we've already mentioned, the APA guide is a fantastic source for learning more about APA and how to apply it to your papers and projects. This slide just shows you with screenshots how to get there from your online courses. So this is an example of in your online course, you click on Books and Tools, and then a menu will appear. And I believe that's going to be on the right side of the screen. In your online course, and then you'd select library resources, and that'll bring you to the library's homepage, and you can select APA from there. I know also a lot of students either have the library's homepage bookmarked on their computers or the APA guide itself, whichever one you prefer, but you'll be probably finding yourself coming back to it fairly often, either one, so I highly suggest bookmarking those. And last but not least, we do have a webinar evaluation form that we're hoping you can fill out to just let us know how we did today, if we have anything to improve or any questions you still have. So you can go ahead and click on that in the chat area, and we'd love to have some feedback from you. But otherwise, our final slide here is a question slide, and we have that for a reason, because we know that there are probably a lot of questions that may still remain about APA. It is a complex topic, a little bit hard, as we can see. We're 2 minutes over to get through in 30 minutes. So we've really scratched the surface here today, but we are available for some time after the webinar here to answer any more precise or specific questions you may have. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now. But we are here to answer any questions you might have.